Welcome back to my spoilers channel. Today we will learn about the explosive developments brewing in Port Charles, where family secrets, unexpected alliances, and corporate espionage have created a perfect storm of drama that threatens to change everything for our beloved characters. The academic conspiracy unfolds. The clandestine operation involving Brennan, Joss, and Vaughn has reached a critical point in their mysterious scheme. During an intense closed-door meeting, Brennan meticulously outlined their strategy regarding Professor Dalton, a figure whose academic reputation masks something far more sinister. This isn't just about academic rivalry, Brennan explained, sliding confidential documents across the polished conference table. Dalton's research contains algorithms that could compromise national security if developed further. Joss, visibly conflicted about her role in this deception, questioned the ethics of undermining Emma's project. Her fingers nervously traced the edge of her coffee cup as Vaughn emphasized the greater good they were serving. Sometimes we must make difficult choices to prevent catastrophic outcomes, he reasoned, his normally jovial demeanor replaced by uncharacteristic gravity. The summer research assistant position, once merely a prestigious academic opportunity, has transformed into a critical access point for their operation. Intelligence suggests Dalton has been receiving substantial funding from an untraceable offshore account linked to known technology thieves. The thumb drive recovered during the beach party contained encrypted communications that confirmed their suspicions. This was never about academic achievement, but about preventing intellectual property theft with international implications. Christina's path to redemption. After narrowly avoiding institutionalization following her shocking actions that nearly resulted in homicide, Christina stands at a crossroads of personal transformation. The weight of her past mistakes has finally penetrated her defensive walls, particularly following her heartfelt reconciliation with Molly, which left both sisters in tears of relief and renewed connection. The profound conversation with Lucky served as a catalyst for her emotional evolution. "Your anger doesn't define you," he had told her, his eyes reflecting understanding rather than judgment. But letting it go requires more courage than holding on to it. These words resonated deeply, prompting her to examine the rage she's harbored since losing her baby, a private grief that had poisoned her relationships and clouded her judgment. Now, with trembling hands but resolute determination, she's crafted a peace offering for someone unexpected. While speculation points to Ava as the potential recipient, subtle clues suggest she may be reaching out to her mother instead. The carefully wrapped package, sitting on her coffee table, contains a handcrafted memento from their past, a symbolic gesture representing both apology and hope for a new beginning. Her journey from attempted murderer to someone seeking reconciliation illustrates one of Port Charles' most compelling redemption arcs, challenging viewers to question whether forgiveness should be earned or freely given. Brooklyn's perplexing situation. The usually composed Brooklyn Quartermain finds herself in uncharacteristic confusion. Pacing the ornate floors of the Quartermain mansion, she repeatedly checks her phone, her brow furrowed with concern. The revelation about the son she relinquished for adoption years ago has resurfaced with unexpected complications. After finally unburdening herself to Tracy, she anticipated relief. Instead, new questions have emerged. A mysterious letter delivered by courier contained information suggesting her child's adoption records had been tampered with. The adoption agency's sudden closure 3 years after finalizing her son's placement raises alarming possibilities about his true whereabouts. Adding to her distress, an unexpected bank transfer from an account in her name, one she never opened, suggests someone has been monitoring her movements for years. The paper trail leads to a series of dead ends, each more frustrating than the last. Could someone in Port Charles know more about her child than they're revealing? Her confusion stems not just from these mysterious circumstances, but from the emotional whiplash of having buried this chapter of her life so thoroughly, only to have it explosively reopened. As she sorts through old photographs hidden in her closet, tears blur her vision, representing both hope and fear about what truths might soon come to light. Lulu's complex emotions. In a rare moment of tranquility, Lulu finds herself experiencing gratitude amidst the chaos of recent events. Sitting by Rocco's bedside, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest after his frightening bout with alcohol poisoning, she's overwhelmed by maternal relief. The medical scare has temporarily displaced her other concerns, creating a bubble of perspective where only his well-being matters. Yet beneath this maternal gratitude lurks a growing suspicion that threatens to shatter her newfound peace. Lois's cryptic comment to Dante, "You don't know who he really is," has planted a seed that's rapidly taking root. The timing of Gio's arrival, his age, certain familiar mannerisms she's noticed but dismissed. These puzzle pieces are suddenly forming a picture she can't see. Could Gio possibly be Dante's biological son? The mathematical probability makes her stomach clench with anxiety. If true, this revelation would create ripple effects throughout Port Charles, affecting not just Dante and Gio, but everyone connected to them. Her secret knowledge has become a burden that grows heavier by the day, threatening to crush her newfound serenity. As she absently strokes Rocco's hair, her mind races through potential scenarios, calculating the emotional fallout of each possible approach to this explosive information. Does she have the right to potentially destroy multiple lives with this revelation, or would concealing it cause even greater damage in the long run? Gio's emotional unburdening. The typically composed Gio finally reached his breaking point after weeks of absorbing the Quartermain family drama. Finding solace in Emma's company, he allowed his carefully constructed facade to crumble, revealing the emotional toll of recent events. "I came here looking for answers about my past," he confessed, his voice uncharacteristically fragile. "Instead, I've walked into a minefield of other people's histories." The Drew versus Tracy crypt situation had barely resolved when Rocco's alcohol poisoning at the beach party created new tensions. Dante's subsequent coldness toward him has been particularly cutting, though neither man understands the potential biological connection underlying their friction. This inexplicable antagonism from someone he secretly admires has wounded Gio more deeply than he's admitted to anyone else. "Sometimes I feel like an anthropologist studying a strange tribe," he told Emma with a sad laugh. "I observe their customs, their conflicts, their alliances, but I never quite belong." His vulnerable admission marks a significant evolution in their relationship. Usually positioned as Emma's confidant and emotional support, this role reversal demonstrates the growing trust between them. What Gio doesn't yet realize is how desperately he'll need this friendship in the coming weeks. The imminent revelation of his true parentage will fundamentally alter his identity and place within Port Charles society. When the truth emerges that Dante, the very man who currently views him with suspicion, is actually his biological father, Emma's unwavering support will become his emotional lifeline. The coming paternity revelation. Though neither man suspects it yet, the simmering tension between Dante and Gio masks a profound biological connection that will soon be uncovered. Their interactions, characterized by inexplicable friction and subconscious recognition, contain subtle clues that astute observers have already noticed. The similar mannerisms, shared temperament, even physical resemblances dismissed as coincidence. The revelation will not come gently. After weeks of building antagonism, a heated confrontation seems inevitable. Perhaps during a family gathering at the Quartermain estate, when emotions are already running high, the truth will explode outward, leaving both men stunned into silence as they process this life-altering information. For Dante, this discovery will force a complete reevaluation of his past, raising questions about relationships he thought he understood. For Gio, it will answer lifelong questions about his origins, while creating entirely new ones about his future. The father-son relationship they might build must first overcome the foundation of misunderstanding and suspicion they've already established. This bombshell will reverberate throughout Port Charles, affecting not just the two men directly involved, but everyone connected to them. Family alliances will shift, long-held secrets will surface, and both men will have to navigate their new reality under the scrutinizing gaze of a community that thrives on dramatic developments. Life at the Quartermain compound. The Quartermain estate, with its imposing architecture and manicured gardens, has always been more than just a restaurant. It's a battlefield where family politics play out daily. Gio's integration into this complex social ecosystem has provided him with a front-row seat to the power struggles, alliances, and betrayals that characterize this influential family. The Drew versus Tracy crypt crisis exemplified the Quartermain tendency toward spectacular confrontations. What began as a disagreement over family legacy escalated into a public showdown that drew attention from across Port Charles. Tracy, defending tradition family values with her characteristic ferocity, clashed with Drew's more progressive vision for the family's future. Their dispute, ostensibly about a memorial crypt, actually represented a deeper conflict about who truly carries the Quartermain mantle forward. Barely had this situation cooled when the beach party incident created new fractures. What should have been a relaxing social gathering transformed into a medical emergency when Rocco's experimentation with alcohol resulted in poisoning, The aftermath created clear divisions, with blame and counter-blame flying between concerned parties. For Gio, navigating these interpersonal complexities, while searching for his own place within this complicated family structure, has created unprecedented stress. Each new drama forces him to choose sides or maintain neutrality, both options carrying potential consequences for his acceptance within the household. The path forward. As these storylines converge and evolve, Port Charles stands on the precipice of transformation. Relationships will be tested, secrets revealed, and new alliances formed in the crucible of coming events. The academic conspiracy involving Brennan, Joss, and Vaughn may have implications far beyond the university setting, potentially intersecting with the Quartermain business interests in unexpected ways. Christina's journey toward redemption will face obstacles, as her olive branch may not be received with the grace she hopes for, testing her newfound commitment to personal growth. Brooklyn's confusion will likely lead to a shocking discovery about her relinquished child, possibly creating ripple effects throughout the community. When Dante and Gio finally discover their biological connection, the revelation will force both men to reconsider everything they thought they knew about themselves and each other. This truth, long buried, will emerge with the power to heal or destroy depending on how they choose to respond. Next, we will learn about the explosive family drama unfolding in Port Charles that has viewers everywhere divided. The aftermath of Rocco's alcohol poisoning incident has sent shockwaves through Port Charles, creating ripple effects that touch multiple families. When young Rocco woke up in the General Hospital room with his concerned parents, Dante and Lulu by his side, his apology could barely penetrate the thick cloud of parental fear and anger that hung in the air. The boy's remorse, though genuine, did little to soothe Dante's furious reaction toward Gio, whom he held responsible for his son's condition. "I've seen too many parents get that call." Dante had exploded in the hospital waiting room, his voice cracking with the weight of professional trauma. "Too many times I've had to tell families their child didn't make it because of alcohol poisoning." His outburst wasn't just about Rocco, it carried the accumulated grief of his police career and the still raw wound of losing Sam. The intensity of his reaction made sense to everyone present, even if his target seemed misplaced. The confrontation that followed, when Dante pulled Gio and Lois aside, escalated beyond anyone's expectations. With Lulu secretly listening from around the corner, her eyes wide with shock, Dante unleashed years of protective paternal instinct on the unsuspecting young man. What no one anticipated was Lois suddenly interrupting with 7 words that could change everything. "You don't know who he really is." The secret that Lois has been carrying has become increasingly burdensome. Watching Dante direct such bitter anger toward Gio's own biological son must be tearing her apart inside. The irony of the situation is almost Shakespearean. A father berating his unknown son for endangering his known son. The complex web of relationships in Port Charles has never been more tangled. Meanwhile, Carly, ever the loyal friend, made a special trip to the boathouse to have a heart-to-heart with Danny. Her message was clear but compassionate. When you're with friends, especially younger ones, you have a responsibility to look out for them. Though careful not to place undue blame on Danny, she emphasized the importance of making better choices. Being the older one means sometimes being the voice of reason, even when it's not popular, she explained, her own experiences as a mother evident in her tone. This alcohol incident, while frightening, might serve as a valuable lesson for Port Charles's younger generation. The consequences have been real enough to make an impression without being catastrophic. Rocco will recover physically, but the emotional aftermath could permanently alter the dynamics between Gio and Dante, a father-son relationship that exists without either party's knowledge. The revelation of Gio's true identity seems increasingly inevitable. With tensions at an all-time high and Lois clearly struggling with the weight of her secret, Port Charles may soon witness one of its most dramatic family revelations in years. The question on everyone's mind is not if the truth will come out, but when, and what the fallout will be when it does. The divided opinions among viewers about paternal rights have created a fascinating discourse online. The controversy centers on a fundamental question: did Dante have the right to know about Brooklyn's pregnancy years ago? The internet has been ablaze with passionate arguments on both sides. "Father's rights can't be at the mother's discretion," wrote one viewer, expressing a sentiment shared by many. "Dante deserved to know about his child regardless of Brooklyn's ultimate decision." This perspective emphasizes the inherent connection between biological parent and child, suggesting that information about one's offspring is a fundamental right rather than a privilege. Another faction of fans presents a more nuanced view. If Brooklyn had planned to raise the baby, Dante absolutely needed to know. But once adoption or termination became her choice, telling him would only create unnecessary pain for everyone involved. This pragmatic approach prioritizes emotional well-being over abstract principles of parental rights. The situation becomes even more complicated when viewed through the lens of Dante's profession. As one astute viewer pointed out, with Dante being a police officer, learning about Lulu's potentially illegal methods of discovering this information puts him in an impossible position professionally. This adds another layer to an already complex moral dilemma. How does one balance personal relationships with professional obligations? Financial responsibility enters the conversation as well, with comments like, if she had decided to raise the baby, Dante would have been financially responsible regardless. That alone should have given him the right to know. This perspective frames parental rights as intrinsically tied to parental responsibilities, suggesting you can't have one without the other. The generational aspect of this storyline creates fascinating parallels between past and present. Brooke Lynn made her decision about Dante's child years ago, and now Dante is facing challenges with his known son Rocco, while unknowingly interacting with his biological son Gio. These multi-generational complications demonstrate how secrets and choices continue to echo through time, affecting relationships in unexpected ways. What makes this storyline particularly compelling is how it reflects real-world debates about reproductive rights, parental responsibility, and the ethics of adoption. The writers have crafted a narrative that refuses simple answers, instead presenting viewers with the messy reality of human emotions and competing valid perspectives. As this drama continues to unfold in Port Charles, the question of who has the right to know what and when remains central. With so many characters now privy to parts of the truth, the pressure continues to build. Lois stands at the center of this emotional hurricane, watching her son face the wrath of a father who doesn't know he's berating his own flesh and blood. The situation with Rocco, while frightening, may ultimately be the catalyst that brings long-buried truths to light. Sometimes it takes a crisis to force difficult conversations, and Port Charles appears to be on the precipice of several revelations that could permanently alter family dynamics throughout the community. What seems increasingly clear is that in Port Charles, as in real life, secrets rarely stay buried forever. The question is no longer if Dante will discover the truth about Gio, but how he'll respond when he does. Will there be forgiveness for those who kept this information from him? Or will this revelation create irreparable rifts between characters who have already endured so much? Next, we will learn about the dramatic developments unfolding in Port Charles that could lead to a significant character departure while exposing shocking medical misconduct that threatens to destroy multiple lives and relationships. A potential departure looms on the horizon. The vibrant streets of Port Charles may soon see one less familiar face as Brad Cooper appears poised for another exit from the canvas. Harry Shen's recurring character has reached what insiders are calling a critical crossroads, upcoming episodes suggesting a dramatic departure following explosive revelations and personal heartbreak. Brad's pattern of appearing for concentrated storyline arcs before vanishing from the landscape has become something of a tradition for viewers. His status as a recurring player rather than a contract performer allows Shen to balance his Port Charles adventures with other professional commitments, creating a character whose comings and goings have become as unpredictable as his moral compass. Industry sources confirm that Shen maintains a diverse portfolio of projects outside the daytime drama world, including voice acting, independent film work, and guest appearances across various platforms. This professional versatility has shaped Brad's storytelling trajectory, with writers crafting self-contained narrative arcs that accommodate the actor's schedule while delivering maximum dramatic impact during his time on screen. Longtime viewers will recall Brad's previous significant storyline involving his aunt, the formidable crime boss Selena Wu. That particular chapter saw him navigate the treacherous waters between family loyalty and personal ethics, culminating in his controversial involvement with Peter August's poisoning. After that explosive conclusion, Brad disappeared from Port Charles only to return for this current storyline, a pattern that seems poised to repeat itself. Thursday's upcoming episode teases what network insiders describe as a life-altering decision for Brad, language typically reserved for character departures or major life redirections. Combined with the emotional devastation of witnessing his ex-husband's blossoming new romance and the dangerous game he's playing with powerful hospital figures, all signs point toward Brad making a strategic retreat from Port Charles with newly acquired resources. Romantic heartbreak fuels desperate actions. The emotional catalyst for Brad's increasingly erratic behavior traces back to a seemingly innocent moment at General Hospital's cafeteria. What should have been a routine lunch break transformed into an emotional ambush when Brad unexpectedly encountered his ex-husband Lucas Jones engaged in an intimate moment with his new romantic interest Marco Rios. The scene unfolded with excruciating intimacy, Lucas and Marco sharing food, exchanging private jokes, and demonstrating the easy affection of a couple building something meaningful. Witnesses described how Marco playfully offered Lucas potato chips, their fingers lingering in contact longer than necessary, their laughter carrying across the cafeteria with the unmistakable lightness of new love. For Brad, who has never fully processed the dissolution of his marriage, this visual confirmation of Lucas moving forward proved devastating. The casual tenderness between the new couple contrasted sharply with Lucas's recent unequivocal rejection when Brad had tentatively suggested reconciliation. "We're never getting back together, Brad," Lucas had stated firmly during their last private conversation. "That chapter of our lives is permanently closed." Psychological experts note that witnessing an ex-partner's happiness with someone new often triggers profound grief, even when intellectually understanding the relationship has ended. For Brad, whose emotional regulation has always been questionable, this visual confirmation of Lucas's romantic progression became the breaking point that pushed him toward increasingly desperate and dangerous actions. The timing of this romantic revelation coinciding with his professional confrontation with Portia created a perfect storm of emotional triggers. Hospital staff who observed Brad immediately after the cafeteria incident described him as visibly shaken and moving with unusual determination, suggesting a direct connection between his personal heartbreak and the bombshell decision to approach Drew with damaging information. Drew receives critical information that changes everything. The sterile environment of Drew Kane Quartermain's hospital room will become ground zero for revelations that promise to reshape multiple storylines and alliances throughout Port Charles. Currently receiving intravenous hydration following his drugging incident, Drew finds himself in a uniquely vulnerable position, physically weakened but intellectually determined to uncover who targeted him. Tuesday's episode centers on what network sources describe as critical information reaching Drew's ears. Almost certainly Brad Cooper's bombshell revelation about who administered the ketamine that derailed both his congressional campaign and his relationship with Willow Tate. The timing couldn't be more significant, as Drew has been mentally reviewing the foggy events of that evening, with his last clear memory involving shaking hands with Tracy Quartermain at the grill. This information arrives at a pivotal moment in Drew's recovery process. Medical consultants for the show explain that ketamine, while dangerous when misused, typically clears the system within 24 to 48 hours, leaving patients with significant memory gaps but few lasting physical effects. Drew's current treatment focuses on rehydration and monitoring for any potential organ stress resulting from the drugging. The congressional candidate's reaction to Brad's information will likely demonstrate the strategic thinking that has made him a formidable business and political figure. Rather than immediate confrontation, insiders suggest Drew will methodically verify Brad's claims before orchestrating a carefully planned response that maximizes both political advantage and personal vindication. For Drew, this revelation represents more than just identifying an enemy. It offers the opportunity to reclaim his narrative with Willow, whose trust has been severely tested by Nina's persistent insinuations about Drew's character. Armed with concrete evidence of sabotage, Drew can position himself as the victim rather than the perpetrator, potentially strengthening both his personal relationship and public standing. The price of truth. Brad's calculated gambit. Brad Cooper's approach to Drew's hospital room wasn't motivated by conscience or moral obligation, but represents a calculated business transaction designed to capitalize on a valuable commodity information. The laboratory technician's dramatic entrance and theatrical delivery of his knowledge showcased his recognition of the leverage you momentarily possessed. "I know exactly who drugged you," Brad announced to Drew, his voice carrying the unmistakable tone of someone who recognizes the value of what they possess. "And I'll tell you, if you make it worth my while." This straightforward proposition transformed sensitive medical information into a marketable asset, with Brad positioning himself as the exclusive vendor of this crucial intelligence. Financial analysts familiar with the Quartermain fortune estimate Drew's net worth in the high 8 figures, making him capable of meeting virtually any reasonable monetary demand. As the co-CEO of Aurora Media and heir to substantial Quartermain holdings, Drew commands financial resources that make Brad's proposition feasible regardless of the price tag attached. The moral complexity of this transaction raises fascinating ethical questions. While Drew's willingness to pay for information about his own medic sabotage seems justified, given the circumstances, Brad's commodification of medical information represents a profound violation of professional ethics. Healthcare privacy experts note that Brad's actions likely constitute multiple violations of hospital policy, professional standards, and possibly state law. However, the desperation driving both men creates unusual alignment of interests. Drew's determination to identify who drugged him intersects perfectly with Brad's need for financial resources to potentially leave Port Charles and establish himself elsewhere. This convergence of motivations makes their illicit transaction virtually inevitable, despite its questionable legality. Nina and Portia's scheme unravels. The elaborate plan, orchestrated by Nina Reeves and Dr. Portia Robinson, appears destined for spectacular failure as its foundations crumble under the weight of Brad's revelations. What began as a calculated attempt to drive a permanent wedge between Drew and Willow now threatens to boomerang dramatically, potentially strengthening the very relationship they sought to destroy. Psychological manipulation experts note that Nina's approach with Willow relied heavily on creating doubt through innuendo rather than evidence. Her persistent suggestions that Drew's behavior resulted from voluntary intoxication rather than sabotage aimed to undermine Willow's trust in her partner's character and judgment. This strategy initially showed promise, creating visible tension between the couple. However, Nina's influence has been steadily waning as Drew has methodically rebuilt Willow's confidence in their relationship. Through consistent communication and transparent vulnerability, Drew has successfully counteracted much of Nina's poisonous influence. The impending revelation that he was indeed the victim of deliberate drugging will likely complete this process, potentially transforming Willow's residual doubts into reinforced loyalty. For Portia, the consequences appear even more dire. As a respected physician, whose professional reputation has remained largely untarnished despite previous ethical lapses, the revelation of her involvement in drugging a prominent community member represents catastrophic professional and personal risk. Medical ethics violations of this magnitude typically result in license revocation, potential criminal charges, and permanent damage to professional standing. The unraveling of their scheme highlights a fundamental miscalculation. Both women underestimated the resilience of Drew's relationships with Willow and overestimated their ability to control the narrative. As with many secrets in Port Charles, what began as a carefully guarded conspiracy now threatens to explode into public view with devastating consequences. Confrontation and consequences. Brad corners Portia. The tension-filled confrontation between Brad Cooper and Dr. Portia Robinson represented a masterclass in psychological warfare, with characters deploying their most effective weapons in a high-stakes verbal duel. Brad initiated the encounter with unmistakable smugness, believing he had finally secured leverage over the respected physician. "I know it was you who drugged Drew Kane with the ketamine I reported missing from the pharmacy," Brad declared, his posture and tone reflecting absolute certainty. "And now you're going to do exactly what I want, or everyone else will know too." This opening gambit reflected Brad's fundamental misunderstanding of his opponent. He assumed Portia would crumble under pressure rather than counterattack. Portia's response demonstrated why she remains one of Port Charles' most formidable personalities. Without hesitation, she flipped the accusation, suggesting that Brad himself was responsible for drugging Drew. "No one would believe an ex-con over me," she noted coolly, accurately assessing the credibility gap between them. Her strategy relied on her sterling reputation versus Brad's history of deception and criminal behavior. This confrontation exemplifies the complex power dynamics that operate within General Hospital's hierarchy. Despite Brad's access to damaging Anderson, Portia's institutional position and community standing create a protective shield that he cannot easily penetrate. Her confidence stems from understanding that accusations require credibility, a resource Brad lacks in abundance. The psychological impact of this rejection visibly destabilized Brad, who departed the conversation in a state of emotional agitation that directly influenced his subsequent decisions. Body language experts analyzing the scene note that Brad's physical response, flushed face, rapid breathing, and clenched fists signaled the rage and humiliation that would fuel his retaliatory approach to Drew. The looming fallout, Portia's exposure, and Brad's exit. As General Hospital viewers brace for Thursday's revelation of Brad's life-changing choice, speculation centers on the twin catalysts driving his potential departure: the professional satisfaction of exposing Portia's misconduct and the personal pain of witnessing Lucas's new romance flourish. Industry analysts suggest Brad's decision to accept Drew's financial offer in exchange for identifying Portia as his attacker represents a brilliant strategic move. By securing substantial financial resources before revealing Portia's involvement, Brad positions himself for a clean exit from Port Charles with the means to establish himself elsewhere. This approach allows him to simultaneously achieve revenge against Portia for her threats and escape the emotional torment of watching Lucas build a life with Marco. For Portia, The consequences of exposure appear catastrophic. Beyond potential criminal charges for administering a controlled substance without consent, she faces devastating professional ramifications. Medical licensing boards typically view such violations as grounds for permanent license revocation. Additionally, her standing at General Hospital would become untenable, particularly given her history of ethical compromises, including concealing the truth about Trina's paternity for years. The collateral damage extends to Nina Reeves, whose involvement in the scheme seems likely to emerge during investigations into Portia's actions. Nina's already tenuous relationship with Willow could suffer irreparable damage when her role in attempting to sabotage Drew is revealed. This disclosure threatens to undermine the fragile progress Nina has made in establishing herself in her granddaughter's life. For viewers, Brad's potential departure represents another chapter in the character's cyclical relationship with Port Charles' periods of absence, punctuated by returns that inevitably feature morally ambiguous choices and dramatic consequences. While the door will almost certainly remain open for another return, the immediate future suggests Brad Cooper will once again vanish from the canvas, leaving destruction and revelation in his wake. As this storyline races toward its explosive conclusion, the fundamental themes remain quintessentially soap opera: revenge, redemption, romance, and the inescapable consequences of deception. Whether Brad returns to face the aftermath of his actions or remains absent until another compelling storyline beckons, his impact on the canvas continues to demonstrate why secondary characters often deliver the most consequential plot developments in the rich tapestry of Port Charles' life.